opportunity that He is. I want to thank God for this opportunity that He has given us to be in His presence, and for giving me the opportunity to read the psalm. I want everyone to be in prayerful attitude as we are going to hear from the Word of God. This is a Psalm of David, and as we all know, we know about the history of the life of David. David was called a man after God's own heart. He was anointed by God Himself, and yet after he was anointed, after several days, after several victories that he had, we see how his life became a life filled with pain and suffering. King Saul had wanted his life, and Saul was chasing him throughout the desert and throughout the wilderness. And one of the main questions that he had was that, Lord, since I have done nothing to deserve all this oppression from my enemy. And in our life, many times, when we face a lot of oppression, when we face a lot of suffering and pain in our life, one of the biggest things that we do is we come to God's presence. To pray. So one thing that I want to mention this morning and let everyone know is that the pain and suffering that we face in our life, or the troubles and the oppression that we face in our life, is not coming in our life to destroy us, but it is coming in our life so that God is telling us, I want you to spend some time and pray.
Amen.
I want you to be more fervent in prayer.
Hallelujah.
And because of all the sufferings that took place in David's life, we were able to see and receive so many psalms, so many prayers of David.
Hallelujah.
And this psalm itself is another prayer that arose from David. So when we read the first verse, it says that, hear a just cause, O Lord. Attend to my cry. Give ear to my prayer, which is not from deceitful lips. First thing that we see is, this is a prayer of David. It's not a big psalm where he's praising or worshiping or thanking God. It's a cry. It's a prayer of David. And in the last part it says that, give ear to my prayer, which is not from deceitful lips.
Oh yes, hallelujah.
So we have to understand that in our life, we have to be more careful about what our prayer is. It is very easy for us to pray for a long amount of time. But here David is saying that his prayer is not coming from deceitful lips. Are we praying the right prayer? When oppression happens in our life, when troubles come in our life, one thing God is asking us, and God is speaking to us through that, is, I want you to pray more efficiently.
Oh yes.
Is our prayer coming from deceitful lips? Or in the King James Version it says, my prayer does not go out of feigned lips. So one thing we have to know in our life, when we face all these problems and issues or troubles or oppression, is that God is telling us to pray the right prayer. Let our prayer not be deceitful. Let our prayer not come from within our emotion. I've noticed this in my life many times, where sometimes when I pray just from my emotion, from my emotional standpoint, just to make myself feel better. But here David is saying, it's not about my emotion or how I feel about my life.
Amen.
My prayer does not come from deceitful lips. And along with that, if we go to verse 3 and 4, we see that he says, you have tested my heart, you have visited me in the night, you have tried me and have found nothing. I have purposed that my mouth shall not transgress. Concerning the works of men, by the word of your lips, I have kept away from the path of the destroyer. Uphold my steps in your paths, that my footsteps may not slip. So now we see that not only is he praying the right prayer, but at the same time he's also living a proper life, a life that is pleasing unto God. Another thing that we find when we are facing oppression and suffering in our life is that God is saying, all right, first you fix your prayer. Now it's not enough that you pray. You have to apply whatever you pray into your life.
Hallelujah. Lord.
It's easy for us to pray, Lord, give me the strength to wake up in the morning and pray in your presence. But then we can pray that, but if you're not going to do it the next morning, that prayer means nothing, no matter how right that prayer is.
Amen.
So here David is saying, Lord, my prayer comes not from deceitful lips, and you have tested me and you have tried me and you have found nothing.
Amen. Hallelujah.
And now we can see, what is David praying for here? If you go to verse 8 and 9, he says, keep me as the apple of your eye. Hide me under the shadow of your wings. From the wicked who oppress me, from my deadly enemies who surround me. So he's praying for protection in the time of suffering. He's praying for protection when he's being oppressed by his enemies. And as he's bringing this prayer, he's telling God that, Lord, I have prayed the right prayer. I have lived the right life. So now I pray that you will protect me and keep me away from my enemies, away from my oppression. And when we see this, anyone can look at this and say, well, if he's living the right life and he's praying the right prayer, his prayer should be answered. But yet we see in verse 10 and verse 11, they have closed up their fat hearts with their mouths. They speak proudly. They have now surrounded us in our steps. They have set their eyes crouching. And then in verse 14, with your hand from men, O Lord, from men of the world who have their portion in this life, whose belly you fill with your hidden treasure, they are satisfied with children and leave the rest of their possession for their babes. So we see that even though he is praying the right prayer and he's living the right life, his oppression, there's no end to his oppression. His enemies are becoming stronger. His enemies are becoming blessed. His enemies are becoming more prosperous. So at this point, anyone can think that, Lord, am I praying the right prayer? Or am I living the right life? Because what is the point of praying day and night if your prayer is not answered? What is the point of praying day and night if your oppression just gets stronger and stronger? If your enemies are getting stronger and stronger? And that is a question David poses here as he's crying out to God, where he's laying down everything that he's done. He said that, Lord, my prayer has been right. It's not coming from deceitful lips. You've tested me and tried me. I've done nothing wrong. And yet I've asked you to protect me and keep me away from this oppression. And yet my enemies are becoming stronger. So that question is something that we all face in our daily lives. Sometimes we pray day and night. Sometimes we live our life to the best of our abilities, and still we feel like there's no point in these prayers. We still feel like our sufferings are increasing, our oppression is getting stronger. So for that, we come to verse 15. As for me, I will see your face in righteousness. I shall be satisfied when I awake in your likeness. So all these prayers that went unanswered, that the prayers that went unanswered and the prayers where his enemies just got stronger, was to bring him to verse 15, where he said that I will be satisfied when I awake in your likeness. His satisfaction is not coming from the fact that his enemies were destroyed. His satisfaction did not come from his oppression and his suffering being stopped. His satisfaction came when he said, one day I will awake in your likeness. And one thing that we must know is that this revelation that David got, this revelation did not come from any man, but it came from within the Spirit. Hallelujah. The Spirit of God that led him to one place and one place only, and that was to Calvary. Because when we go to Romans 8:29, if we can read it. For whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. God's eternal purpose in our life, ever since the creation, it was to be conformed to the image of God. Amen. And that revelation was given to David because his prayers were not answered. Because he went through all these sufferings. So today from Psalm 17, what I want to bring to you in my short meditation is that we can pray the right prayer, we can live the right life, and yet when our prayers go unanswered, it's not to destroy us. It's not God telling you, I'm not listening to your prayer, change your prayer, change your life. It's God telling us that I'm bringing you to the cross of Calvary. I'm bringing you to that revelation. And we heard this morning in the Bible study, where is our priority? David here in verse 15 said, I shall be satisfied when I awake in your likeness. Our satisfaction must not come from the fact that we prayed for something and we got it. But ultimately, our satisfaction comes from the fact that one day when we awake, we will be in the likeness of God. So this morning time, let us just submit ourselves to this word, knowing that the troubles that come in our life, the prayers that go unanswered, the prayer, when you pray and the opposite things happen, it's not because your prayer is not being heard by God. It is because God is taking you to a revelation of the cross of Calvary. May God bless us with these words.